I'm going to be talking about resiliency. So, my thing here is that we spend so much time in this field of public safety psychology talking about trauma and PTSD and all of these like horrible things that can happen to you. But we don't talk about the other side of that, and that's resiliency. And so, we talk a lot about the problem and how we react to the problem. But I would rather talk to you for the next hour or so about how do we prevent problems in the first place? How can you actually have a healthy, long career in law enforcement or fire or EMS? So that's my spiel for today. So this is just a little bit about me. I'm board certified in police and public safety. I saw some people from Hawaii in there. I'm licensed in Hawaii, so I scrolled through the list briefly and I saw some names that I recognized, and so I'm always excited about that. As Dara mentioned, I tend to be a little bit outspoken and advocate, especially for law enforcement. It's my privilege to be able to do so. And my contact information will be on here after the presentation. So if you guys have questions that maybe you're not comfortable asking during the presentation or towards the end, I am happy to always chat or communicate over phone or email or whatever about any questions you might have. So the term resiliency, you're probably wondering, why the heck does she have a Prius up here with all of these crazy bumper stickers? And the reason is that I think that oftentimes we hear this word resiliency and it's just like this bumper sticker term, resiliency, wellness, and we think, what does that even mean? It's just like this fluffy term. What does it actually mean? So here's your dictionary definition of resiliency: the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness, or the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, or elasticity. So resiliency is the ability to bounce back from tough times. That's really the easiest definition that I can give you. Um, there's resiliency is the reason that two soldiers can go to war, see the same exact combat, and one comes back with PTSD and one doesn't. Resiliency is the ability for people to be able to bounce back and to manage all of life's stressors. So I want to talk to you about how do you actually build resiliency so that hopefully, throughout your career, as you encounter all of these incredibly traumatic and stressful situations, whether it be work related, whether it be at home or with your family or driving or what have you, that you feel like you can bounce back. So resiliency does not mean that a person won't experience stress or distress. Um, in fact, the road to resilience is paved with emotional distress. So it's not that we're going to avoid distressful or stressful situations. Um, First responders have trained themselves. You guys have all trained yourselves to disregard stress cues, disregard doubts, disregard your fears, because in the moment, your number one job is to take care of other people. Newer research, though, teaches us that stuffing these emotions, which, let's be honest, a lot of you guys do, is not effective. You guys all know this in theory, but not always in practice. Repressing emotions might help you function in the moment, but the cumulative impact of stress will be so much greater. So I don't want you all to think that this is not about not experiencing stress. It's about what you do with it. So why do we care? Like, why should public safety even care about resiliency? And for any of you all who are in command or executive level positions, pay attention here, because you guys should be caring the most about your personnel's resiliency. So resiliency is really important because it's all about prevention. How do we actually prevent problems? We want to prevent problems that are related to mental health and stigma, right? So this entire conference is about responder wellness, and there's going to be talks about mental health and smashing the stigma of PTSD. We can prevent some, not all of those problems by having good resiliency. We know that there's a lot of stigma, right? I mean, think about the characteristics that make you all who you are. You maintaining control and having a command presence on the scene, being action oriented, adrenaline seeking, your problem solvers, your decision makers. There's this inherent desire to rescue. All of these really amazing qualities that make you all really good at your job. And many of you probably got into this line of work because those qualities were just so inherent in who you are as a person. And then there's the public perception, right? So you guys all internalize all of those qualities, but the public perception on the positive side is that responders are responsive. You guys are heroes. You're reliable. You're strong. And many of you all probably feel the desire to live up to a lot of those qualities. In turn, when you don't acknowledge that there are issues going on and you just focus so much on those positive qualities and living up to that image, it can create a lot of turmoil. And then, of course, there's the negative perception sometimes from the public, especially for those of you who are in law enforcement. You guys have been dealing with that a lot for the past year and a half, 2 years, right? Some of you may have had people tell you that you're killers or that you're racist, all of that stuff, right? That starts to take an emotional toll on you as well. And I think, yes, we want to prevent mental health problems as much as we can. Over 90% of first responders say that stigma is the barrier to them seeking behavioral health treatment. So the more that we talk about this, the more that Dr. Dara and the world needs more people like him, put on conferences like this. They're absolutely free to first responders, all the people that support stuff like this. The more that we talk about it, of course, we're going to reduce stigma over time. So resiliency and reduction of stigma and mental health problems absolutely go hand in hand. But having good resiliency also has the ability to prevent problems that are related to compassion fatigue. And so what compassion fatigue really looks like is if you ever find yourself less interested in being empathic or compassionate toward others. So what I say, and I do curse a bit, and so I'm going to curse. But like when you find that your ability to tolerate day-to-day bullshit has been decreased, a lot of the time that's related to compassion fatigue. You've just stopped giving a damn. Or what happens with compassion fatigue is kind of the opposite, is that you start to adopt the emotional pain and suffering of others. So it can really be at both sides of the continuum. So you tend to take things overly personally. Or we call this also vicarious trauma. So day in, day out, you're dealing with other people's traumas, you're listening to their stories, and you start to kind of adopt them. And so you find yourself kind of worrying about the people that you were on a call with earlier in the day and thinking about them, and it's impacting your sleep, and you just can't stop having these racing thoughts about everything. So that's compassion fatigue. Good resiliency can help set good boundaries around compassion fatigue and make it not as impactful. And then burnout. We want to prevent burnout as much as we can, because when people get to that phase of burnout, they start to feel resentful about their jobs. They feel like they can't do it anymore. They're ready to quit. They're irritable. It's really this state of mental and physical exhaustion. And so you may, or maybe you have some friends, quotation marks, who are in this state where they feel bored with their job. They're cynical. Now you guys are already cynical as it is, but if other people are like, wow, like you're crusty, it probably means that you're too cynical and that maybe you're on that edge of burnout. Overly impatient, irritable, kind of quick to anger. If you're constantly feeling unappreciated or feeling like people in the department are out to get you. If there's changes in the way that you work, normally you're really responsive and all of a sudden you're just kind of making these careless errors, or it's taking you a while to respond to calls, or you're not as much as a go-getter as you initially used to be. That may be a sign of burnout. Somatic complaints. So that's going to be things like headaches or gastrointestinal problems that seem recurrent. A lot of times, emotional problems come out somatically or physiologically through headaches or GI problems. If you're feeling disoriented, paranoid, and of course, depressed or suicidal, those may be symptoms of burnout. And that's really when things are work-related and difficult. So we want to prevent all of these problems. And here's the thing too, especially for those of you, again, who are in executive or command level positions, there's so many benefits if your personnel are resilient. So if you have resilient personnel, people who are resilient, they handle stress better, they set better boundaries. You will see they can avoid burnout because they handle stress better. You will see a more optimistic attitude versus a cynical or pessimistic attitude. And in turn, that improves morale within a department because we all know that pessimism is contagious and optimism is as well. So morale is huge. You will notice increased presenteeism, which means that people are more present and mindful in their work, that they are there and their mind is not wandering into other places, which means that they're going to uh, make better judgment on calls. They're less likely to make mistakes. And you'll also see decreased absenteeism and attrition. So what that means is there's less people calling in sick, less early retirements or medical retirements because of mental health problems. You'll notice that your staff and your personnel is better able to respond to calls, that they're a more effective teammate, that they are more of a problem solver, that they're willing to help, that they make better decisions and they have better judgment. So all of these really good characteristics are part of a good resilient person. And so agencies that can support the wellness and resiliency of their personnel are going to see all of these really great things. Departments that don't support wellness and resiliency are going to see their employees leave for departments that do. So take note. So what do we know about improving resiliency? So resilience involves behaviors, thoughts, and actions that anybody can learn and develop. So it's these three things, and we're going to talk about all three of them. I'm going to give you some actual concrete tools that you can start to implement in your day-to-day life. The ability to learn resilience is one reason that research has shown that resilience is actually ordinary. It's not this extraordinary construct that seems unattainable. It's ordinary. We just have to develop it. Anybody can learn and develop resilience. But like building a muscle, increasing your resilience takes time and intentionality. And so, as I go through some of these ideas today, I want you to think about it like you are building a muscle. So, if you haven't worked out in 2 years and you automatically start going to the gym, there's going to be a little bit of resistance there at first, and you're not going to see changes overnight, but it takes time. And so as long as you continue to develop these skills and implement some of these techniques, over time, you're going to see that you develop more resiliency. It's kind of like that six-pack that none of us have. All right, so there's 4 main components of resiliency, and I'm going to go through each one of these. So there's connection, wellness, healthy thinking, and making meaning. So 4 different components. So let's start with the first one. So connection. So 4 things that I want you all to be thinking about when it comes to connection. So number 1, I want you to think about prioritizing your relationships. So what that means is connecting with empathetic and understanding people. And this can remind you that you're not alone in the midst of difficulty. Focus on finding trustworthy and compassionate individuals who validate your feelings, which will support the skill of resilience. And so, Nick had mentioned that he was a Marine. So these are your battle buddies. These are your teammates. These are the people that you rely on for cover, that you know that you can go to with anything. These are the people that you want to check in on that locker if God forbid you are ever killed in the line of duty. These are the people that will help you to hide the body after you kill someone, which you would never do, of course. So these are your true few. These are your good people. When you prioritize those good relationships, rather than spending time on unhealthy, toxic relationships, people that drain your energy, that's going to improve your resiliency over time. And then I think it's important to consider here that when people go through traumatic events, there's often this desire that you want to isolate yourself, that you want to withdraw, that you just want to stay in bed all day, that you want to sit in your chair and play video games, that you feel like nobody can understand you. Trauma leads to this. Your relationships with other people start to dwindle. And for those of you who have been in the field for some time, you have probably noticed this, that the people that you spend time with, your friends maybe that are outside of work, you spend a lot less time with them. Those are the relationships that you probably want to be working on. It's important to accept help and support from the people who actually care about you. And so this is your friends, but this is also your spouse and your loved ones, your family members. So whether this is a weekly date night with your spouse, planning a lunch out with a friend, try to actually prioritize genuinely connecting with people that care about you. So think about your team. Know who your team is. And briefly, as I'm sitting here and talking to you about this, who is on your team? The different people that are on your team, what are their roles? What do they bring to that team? I as I think about sometimes, first responder wellness, I have this idea in my head that, like, I don't know if you guys have seen Disney's High School Musical, but like I think about like Dr. Dara and myself and Iva Rhodey and a lot of the presenters here. I feel like we all have these like different roles in our first responder wellness High School Musical. So we kind of are this team. But your family, your friends, who's on your team? Each player, what are their strengths and weaknesses? What are the characteristics of your team? What's the quality of this team? Are these people that you can actually rely on? And of course, you need to think about too what you bring to the team, right? What do you put out there? What kind of energy, what kind of karma are you putting out there, right? You get what you put out. Think about the groups that you're a part of. So along with one-on-one relationships, a lot of people find that being active in different groups, so this could be civic groups or clubs, faith-based communities like a religion, or other organizations, not only provide social support, but can help you reclaim hope. Having a group, especially when outside of work, helps to give you other identities other than I'm a police officer, I'm a paramedic, I'm a firefighter, I'm a psychologist. You want these other identities outside of work. So look up groups in your area. What are other organizations, volunteer groups that you could be a part of, that you could spend your time and kind of give something? That's going to help you to develop connections outside of what is your comfort zone and help you connect with like-minded individuals. It really also helps to give you a sense of support, a sense of purpose and joy, especially when you need it. And then, of course, peer support. And so this can be formal peer support, like what your agency offers as part of their peer support team, or if you have regional peer support teams. But this can also be organizations that provide peer support. So locally, we have Pistol here, which has support groups for first responders. But there's so many different groups nationwide and internationally, I'm guessing, that have peer-to-peer contact. So not everyone wants to talk to a shrink. I don't see why, because I think that we're pretty damn cool, but that's not everybody's jam. So having peer supporters, people that truly understand the job, that can be absolutely huge. So connection, super important component of resiliency. The second is fostering wellness. And of course, this is where Dr. Dara's whole conference comes in. And so you're going to be hearing about all of these different things. I'm sure you've heard a lot of them today. So today and next Friday, so much of this stuff. So number one is take care of your body. Sleep hygiene, huge. Sleep is literally the basis of everything that you do. So your immune system is based on your sleep. Your ability to manage stress based on your sleep. Psychiatric symptoms worsen if your sleep sucks. We know this. And so having good sleep hygiene is really important. The thing is that this is not always very easy to do for shift workers, right? So especially for those of you who are maybe working graves or swings, your sleep schedule is a little bit messed up. And so what you may find is that on your weekends, you try to adjust your sleep schedule to be closer to that of your family members, your spouses. Maybe they work a regular 9 to 5. But that kind of jacks with everything because then you really are losing out on restful sleep. Other things that are good for sleep hygiene, right? Limiting electronic usage right before bed. Don't watch TV. Uh, don't use your bed for anything other than sleep and sex. So don't be doing work in bed. Um, just that's all you should be using it for. Having a dark room with blackout curtains. I tell people don't look at the clock in the middle of the night. Um, Math is one of the most complex tasks that your mind can do. And so many of you who have sleep problems may find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, looking at the clock, and then basically be doing algebra, trying to figure out how many hours of sleep you have left until you have to be up. That's not good. So what I tell people, keep your phone across the room, set an alarm, don't look at your phone or don't look at a clock. Trust that your alarm will go off when it needs to go off. Having a good sleep routine, whether that's showering right before bed. Um, Even people will use aromatherapy. So sleep hygiene, absolutely huge. And if you're looking for good resources on sleep hygiene, the National Sleep Foundation has a website with different quizzes and different recommendations that I would highly recommend. Exercise is huge. Exercise, especially cardiovascular activity, is absolutely huge when it comes to wellness. There are studies that suggest that 30 minutes of cardiovascular activity 3 times a week for 30 minutes at a time can be as effective as an antidepressant for cases of mild depression. That's huge. I always tell people if you're not exercising, if you're not going for walks, if you're not running, if you're not hiking, doing something, you need to be because that's huge. And the thing is that when people experience stress, the body releases cortisol, that's stress chemical. And as that stress chemical, that cortisol builds up over time, eventually it spills out if you don't do anything about it. And one of the best ways to reduce cortisol in your system is through exercise. So you have to be doing it. It's also a really great outlet. And then, of course, nutrition and hydration, right? The food that you put in your body affects you. If you are eating a lot of simple carbohydrates, you might find that you are tired more often. Whereas people who have more complex carbohydrates, lean proteins, fruits, and veggies have a lot more energy. Hydration is important. You're probably going to have other people that know a lot more about this stuff than me. So just make sure you drink your water. Mindfulness is huge. And I know it can sound a little hippy dippy sometimes. And it oftentimes takes me a lot of coaxing and a lot of trying to con my responders, especially my law enforcement officers, into mindfulness and meditation and yoga. But once they do it, they see such great results. Mindfulness has become really big, not only for general public, but for first responders in the last couple of years. Some of you may heard of the group, the Yoga for First Responders group. But mindfulness is basically taking time to relax, where you can actually relax and be present in your relaxation and eliminate outside distractions. So relaxing is not sitting on the couch watching Monday Night Football while you scroll through Instagram or Facebook. Those are really great distractions, but that's not relaxing. Relaxing is putting your phone away, watching Monday Night Football, and appreciating the adrenaline rush when your team scores a touchdown, or better yet, when they get a pick six. And I have football references later. That's what relaxation is, taking time for yourself where you can actually eliminate some of the big distractions and appreciating that time. Meditation goes along with that. So that's being present in the moment. There's so many amazing apps out there for meditation, Calm, Headspace. I am not a big meditation person. I swear I have like undiagnosed ADHD and I'm all over the place at any given moment. I've got about 5 minutes max of meditation in me. But the good thing is that you can go on iTunes, you can go on Spotify, and you can search 3-minute meditations or 4-minute meditations and find some that work for you. Guided meditations are great. It doesn't mean that you're sitting, on the floor Indian style with your, hands up going, It doesn't have to be that way. Practice gratitude, appreciate the good things in life when they're happening. It's really easy to focus on the negative, and good breathing techniques. So, um, belly breathing, not chest breathing, which is like hyperventilating, but actually doing belly breathing, combat breathing, holding your breath, exhaling, and being really mindful of how that works. That will help to improve your mindfulness. And then avoiding negative outlets. So specifically here, what I'm talking about is drinking and drug use. My guess is that a lot of you guys are not using a ton of drugs. If you are, I don't know, talk to me after. We should have a little discussion. But especially with alcohol, it's easy to rely on alcohol to relax you after a hard shift or on your weekends. It's easy because it makes you more sociable. It makes you feel like you can be a little bit more jovial. Maybe it helps to numb some of the pain, but it's not good. So don't do it. And avoid negative outlets can also be things like social media and having really good boundaries around social media. So what I tell people is if you can take the app off your phone, maybe you do that. Make it a little bit more difficult if you have to actually access a computer and check social media. That'll help you set better boundaries. I don't know how many of you all listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm a fan of his, but what he does is he has two phones, one that he uses as a phone that he has with him at all times, and one for social media. And that's his social media phone, and he puts it away, at 6 p.m. every night. And that's what he does to create those good boundaries, because it'll suck you in. Make meaning. And this is where we get into a little bit more of the stuff that I think is really important. So find a purpose in life. Help others. So, as I was joining and Nick was signing off, he was talking about finding your why. Like what lights a fire under your ass in the morning? What gets you out of bed? Why are you doing what you do? Remember that purpose. Because there are going to be distractions every day that try to pull you away from that. And it's important to remind yourself daily of the reason that you're doing what you're doing. Why are you living? What's your purpose in life? Help others. Find volunteering. That is, I think, so cathartic to be able to give the gift of helping somebody else. And many of you joined this profession so that you could. But I know that there are days where you feel like you're not helping other people, where you feel like nothing is going your way. And so you can't rely on the job in and of itself to be that avenue for you to be able to help other people. Be proactive. It's helpful to acknowledge and accept your emotions during hard times, but it's also important to help you foster self-discovery by asking yourself, what can I do about a problem in my life? So, we tell people, especially as therapists, like to just feel things, and that it's important to feel things and to ride that wave, and it is. But if you don't do something about it, then it can feel very hopeless and helpless. If the problems seem too big to tackle, break them down into smaller, manageable pieces. And if it's something that you can't change, then you have to make the choice to cope with it. Move toward your goals. Develop realistic goals and do something regularly. Even if it's like a small accomplishment, this enables you to move toward the things that you want to accomplish. So instead of focusing on tasks that just seem completely unachievable, ask yourself this: what's one thing I know that I can accomplish today that helps me move in the direction that I want to go? So as an example, if you're struggling with the loss of a loved one and you want to move forward, you might join a grief support group in your area. You might write a letter to them. If one of your goals More concretely is to lose 30 pounds. Then what you might do is set smaller goals to attend, go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, or to change your diet. Um, what I call this is process oriented rather than outcome oriented thinking. So we're not focused as much on the outcome. We're focused more on the small steps that it takes to get there. Look for opportunities for self discovery. And you do this by taking time for yourself and really trying to get to know yourself. And so that could be things like reading, or trying something that you haven't tried before. It starts to develop some competency and confidence in other areas of your life, and helps to kind of expand your comfort zone. So this is important. Um, and then I already kind of mentioned this, but taking time for yourself for relaxation. So lastly, the last component for developing resiliency is healthy thinking. So this is my football reference again. So keep things in perspective. So what that means is, I want you to think of your day-to-day life like it's a football game. There's 4 quarters in a football game. And even Tom Brady loses games. And sometimes you're watching football and your team absolutely blows during the first quarter or even the second half of the game. But how many times have we watched a game and we see that score turn around and our team comes out on top and they win? So I want you to take that same perspective with your life and with your day-to-day activities. So if something bad happens in your day, are you going to just assume then that the rest of your day is going to suck, that you can't do anything about it? Or are you going to say, okay, this is a small period of time and I have the opportunity to turn this around? I can make choices that are going to make my day better. Adopting this mindset is going to make you a more resilient person. This perspective, when we talk about trauma, is also what helps people with post-traumatic growth. This is kind of a newer concept when we talk about trauma, but post-traumatic growth is really the idea that trauma can be the root for even more transformation for a person. So they have the ability to actually lead a more purposeful, a more meaningful life after something bad happens, because of the perspective that they have. Accept change. Being concrete, being inflexible in your thinking is it's not good. And so the more flexible that you can be, the more change that you can accept, the better and more resilient you're going to be. Maintain a hopeful and an optimistic outlook. So having an optimistic outlook, it really empowers you that to expect that good things will happen to you. So I want you to try visualizing what you want rather than worrying about what you fear. It's really easy to worry about what you fear. And I'm not saying that while you're working that you don't run through all of the different scenarios of bad things that could happen when you're on a call, because the reality is that you have to do things that are going to keep you safe. But outside of that, what do you want? What goals do you have in your life? Instead of thinking about all of the stuff you don't have, think about what you have and the opportunities that you have for more. As you're thinking about this, just note any subtle ways in which you start to feel better as you deal with difficult situations. Learn from your past. Stop repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Actually look at those scenarios and say, okay, what can I do differently? What have I learned about myself? What have I learned about other people? What have I learned about my relationships? Some of you may have been in toxic or unhealthy relationships in the past. If you think about this, like when you're dating somebody, right? You have to kiss a couple frogs before you meet your prince. And you learn from each of those frogs that you kiss, right? What works in a relationship for you, what doesn't, what qualities are important, what are your hard no's. And over time, you start to learn about what's going to make the ideal partner for you and what's going to work for you in a relationship. Think about that, having that mindset with everything else. Track your mood and your thoughts. So when I talk a little bit about cognitive distortions, I'm going to talk about this. But what this really means is our thoughts and our emotions and mood are all interconnected. So the way that we think influences our mood, the way that our mood is can influence our behavior. So if I have a thought that my boss is out to get me and everybody hates me, I'm going to have a pretty pessimistic attitude at work. And if I carry that attitude at work, that's going to lead to me isolating myself from my coworkers. It's going to lead to me making mistakes, probably careless errors, stuff like that. And so, really start to track your mood and your thoughts and see what things are related and learn to challenge them. Recognize and challenge cognitive distortions. And I'm going to go through the cognitive distortions on the next slide. And I'm also going to talk to you about how do you actually shut down counterproductive thinking. So here's our list of cognitive distortions. So here's the thing, we all engage in cognitive distortions. These are faulty ways of thinking that are not always accurate, but nobody's perfect. And perfection is never the goal. So I don't expect anybody to never do any of these. In fact, on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure I do a number of them. But when you start to increase your awareness about these different thought processes, you become more aware of them, you can then challenge them. So all or nothing thinking is black or white. Things are either bad or they're good. There is no gray area. I notice this a lot in first responders, and that's because of the experiences that you guys have had over time, where you're dealing with people that are typically bad. And a lot of times there is no gray area when it comes to the law. There's not a lot of gray area when it comes to medicine. So it can a lot over time lead to pretty consistent all or nothing thinking, black or white. Overgeneralizing things. A negative event is a never-ending pattern of defeat. This always happens to me. Things are never going to get better. I didn't get the promotion that I went for. I didn't promote to sergeant, therefore I never will. Some of you guys may have noticed that, right? This is pessimistic thinking. Dwelling on the negatives, that's your mental filter. Discounting the positives. I talked about the football game. So you start to insist that the good things that happen or the positive qualities don't count. You focus more on the negative. Yeah, I did. I was able to save the woman's life, but she still lost her child. And you forget that you were able to save the woman. Jumping to conclusions. How many of you guys do that? You make assumptions, jump to conclusions. And this can happen in two ways. One is mind reading. So regarding other people's responses as a negative to you, even though there's not evidence. I know that they hate me. I know they don't like me. Or you arbitrarily predict that things will turn out bad. I knew this was going to happen. Things always turn out bad. I always run into traffic. How many of you guys have ever referred to yourselves as a shit magnet? That's fortune telling. Magnification or minimization. So either blowing things way out of proportion or shrinking their importance. A lot of us are guilty of that. And I see the magnification and minimization probably equally when it comes to responders. So magnification is, right, like you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Something is really small, but you have turned it into this big, huge problem in your head. This happens a lot of times with people who are going through internal affairs investigations or professional standards, right? You start to have this assumption that, or this fear that you're going to lose your job, that you're going to lose your pension. What are you going to do? Your family's going to become homeless, and you run down this whole long line of all of these problems that could happen. And then minimizing. I see this a lot of times, especially after trauma, because a lot of times, responders, you guys have a tendency to stuff and try to tell yourself that it's not a big deal. I'm strong, I can handle this. When in fact, it's kind of a big deal. Emotional reasoning. I feel like an idiot, so I must be one. I feel sad, therefore something bad must have happened. I'm feeling angry, therefore somebody must have done something wrong. That's a big one. Should statements, when you say should, shouldn't, ought, must, have to, that really comes out as criticism towards yourself or other people. And it's basically setting these unrealistic standards, labeling. Instead of telling yourself I made a mistake, you start calling yourself a name. I'm a dumbass, I'm a fool, I'm a loser, but both to yourself and other people, right? So you start to characterize other people instead of focusing on their actual behaviors. And then personalizing and blaming yourself for something that you were not entirely responsible for, or blaming somebody else. So these are big problems. And again, there's no expectation of perfection, because Lord knows that I do these all the time too. But the point is that you increase your awareness over time, because what you do is you recognize when you're saying something or you're having a thought that includes one of these distortions. And when you have that thought, then you can go back and do what I mentioned, which was think about there's this thought. How does it make me feel? What behavior? How do I challenge that thought? What's another way to think about this? What I tell people is, when you're having one of these distortions, what's the evidence for your thought and what's the evidence against it? And then challenge it. So if you say, I should have gotten that promotion, you're setting that standard for yourself. It's just setting yourself up for a disappointment. Why not change it to, I wish I would have gotten that promotion? There's a difference in the language, and the language that we use with ourselves can be incredibly powerful. One of the things that you can do, especially if challenging isn't working, or if you just find your mind racing in the moment, is shutting down counterproductive thinking. Eventually, it's important to kind of explore it a little bit more, but when your mind is racing, it's not that easy to go in and kind of look at the evidence for and against your thoughts. And so engaging in different thought stopping techniques can be pretty helpful. So there's a number of mental games that you can play, and that's for just real-time, in-the-moment resilience. So it's to help shut down counterproductive thinking and break the pattern of negative thoughts in the moment by using these different mental games. So one, we call them games, but really this first one is math. So the numbers game, count backwards from 500 by fives or sevens, or you can multiply by threes, whatever. So you kind of pick a pattern, and what that does is that gives you something else to focus on in the moment. This is, as I mentioned before, math is one of the most complex tasks that you can engage in. And so this is going to shift your mind from whatever is bothering it to something. You're going to be utilizing your left brain, which is the logical and reasoning side of your brain, calming down your nervous system. And once you're calm, you're able to more effectively think about the pros and cons of a situation. You can play the categories game. I don't know if you guys, when I was a kid, we played this game in the pool. We played categories, and it was like one of the most fun games ever in the pool. So like now I'm bringing up positive memories, which is another good resilient thing to do. But name as many of a particular category at a time. So different sports figures. So you could say like, okay, I'm gonna keep just thinking of as many quarterbacks as I can. I'm in like a football mood today. I think it's because it's the weekend. How many US presidents can I name? Don't even try to name them in order. Action movies, rom-coms, kitchen gadgets, whatever. Just think of a category and start to name some of those in your head. And then lyrics. So just reciting the lyrics to one of your favorite songs. So when you use mental games like these, it helps to retrain your brain to interrupt that negative thinking. It takes time, but it's worth it. And again, once your mind has stopped racing, then you're more able to look at those distortions or that unhealthy thinking and challenge it and find some replacement words. So what I'm kind of excited to share with you all, Iva is going to put this in the chat. I sent her a link, and this is for a resilience quotient assessment. So this is super easy for you guys, and it's linked to a Google Doc so that you guys can access it and you can print it out and you can share it with your friends. And I included the scoring on there too and the directions for interpreting it. We've all heard of IQ, which is your intelligence quotient. Some of you may have heard of EQ, which is a person's emotional intelligence, but this has to do with resilience quotients. So what this does is this is a skill, this is kind of a self-assessment, and you can go through all of these different items and rate them from 1 to 6, from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and just kind of see where your resilience is. So as I go through some of these, and we're not going to go through all of them just in the interest of time, but you can see some of the questions. I know what's important in my life. When I have a problem to solve or a decision to make, I usually spend time defining that problem. I have a diverse group of people for friends. I think and speak positively about myself and my abilities when facing challenges. I start each workday by thinking about what I need to accomplish during the day and reviewing what I need to accomplish the next day. I find it easy to empathize with others. I find it easy to form long-lasting friendships. When I face challenges, I'm able to maintain confidence in my ability. I've got a good idea about what I want to accomplish in my work life. I try to get down to the root cause of a problem before I try to solve it. I know what I need to do to achieve my personal goals. I regularly participate in one or more non-work related group activities with friends. So there's this scoring rubric, and you input the item numbers and give yourself a score. And there's all of these different categories of self-assurance, your own personal vision, your flexibility, your organization, whether you're connected, whether you're proactive, and it will give you a score. And these are the different scores that you can have. Those are the total scores, but it also has this cool graph that you could kind of plot your scores on for each category. And so ideally you would be outside of this gray circle for all of your scores, but if any of those items are within the gray circle, then that's going to be an area that you want to expand upon. So to maintain or strengthen your resilience, you'd want to focus on expanding and growing the size of this wheel that you create, as well as targeting for special emphasis any of the dimensions that are on here. There's going to be an imbalance. There's going to be some areas that you're better in than others. If one RQ dimension is significantly higher than the others, then consider this as a really important asset for yourself that you can build on as you strive to grow other dimensions. So kind of in conclusion, be aware of your deficits when it comes to resiliency and aim to expand resiliency in those areas. Use your strengths, practice these tools every day. Start by integrating one recommendation a day and build up as time goes on. As I mentioned before, perfection was not the goal. So I will open it up for questions, and Dr. Dara, if he has got anything that he would like to add.
Hey, Katie, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to get my video. Yeah, there we go.
There you are. There's that pretty face.
Thank you. That was such a fantastic twist, as you said in the beginning, on how do we prevent these issues from coming up. And I think that you hit on all of these areas that will really help to prevent burnout, as well as post-traumatic stress, and really helping people to figure out how to promote themselves in a positive light with positive thoughts and positive thinking. You know, I like the obviously cognitive behavioral therapy twist to it with the the rational thoughts and irrational thoughts, because I think that that's truly how people really make changes. One of the things I've been kicking around recently, and kind of I think we probably feel the same way, is that I've been trying to tell people, feed your soul versus surrounding yourself with people that steal your soul. You know, and so when we find our group that we belong to, do they feed our soul on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, you know, as opposed to just sitting around gabbing about all the negative things about the administration and the calls that you go on. you've probably seen similar and felt similarly as well.
We only have so much energy. And
Mhm.
so are we going to surround ourselves with people that give us energy, or they're going to just
Mhm.
suck it out of us?
Yeah, as my sister would call those people energy vampires.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think that's true. I mean, look at this stuff. We have so many amazing comments here. I really like that document that you shared. I just downloaded it and saved it to my hard drive.
Yes.
I never even heard of it before, so it was something definitely new. And then we had some recommendations here from other folks here for thought stopping EFT tapping. I'm not too familiar with, but it is definitely something to look into. And then we have other things here that were recommended too. There was a person from Alaska who talked about Insight Timer is a free app for meditation. I never heard of it. Have you?
No, but that's what I love about this stuff. There's like just all of the comments in the chat and just the opportunity to learn from everybody, because you guys have
Yeah.
such great insights and comments.
Janice says Emotional Vampires is a great book. Yeah, that's great. We'll have to check that one out and see. Well, Katie, this is really fantastic. Thank you. I'm not sure if you have time to stick around and to respond or look at some of these chat things. But
Yes.
anything else that you wanted to leave on?
No, I just, thank you guys so much for putting in the work of, Dr. Dara, not only you for putting on this conference. I can't call you Dr. Dara, by the way. I'm like really struggling, like just not calling you Dara.
Would you call? I don't care.
I know, but everyone else calls you Dr. Dara. But thank you so much. I mean, I will just say this to everybody who's attending. I mean, Dr. Dara is like, he's one of the good ones, right? The world needs more people like this that are taking the time out of their day, these 2 Fridays, to put on a free conference and to get all of these speakers. I love the lineup. It's super impressive. And just the fact to get this many people in one place. And for those of you guys who are attending, like, thank you for putting in the time and the effort that you actually care about this stuff, because I think that this is so incredibly important for first responders and public safety professionals all over to be able to implement this, because I want you guys to have long careers, and all of this stuff is like, let's let you guys have the longest careers that you want, that you don't have to leave because you get fired or because you do something dumb. Do it because you want this career and you want it to last long. So I love all of this great stuff. So everybody here, amazing.